So who is eligible? Last year, we slightly updated the eligibility criteria. So currently, you need to be a UK national currently living in the UK, and you'd need to prove that with so the easiest way to prove that is with a utility bill with your home address on it. So you need to be a UK national currently living in the UK, and you need to be able to prove it. You need to attain a GMAT score of approximately 650. We do accept slightly below, or we do also accept the GRE and an equivalent score. There's a website where you can work out the equivalent score between the GMAT and the GRE. And in some cases, we have also accepted a waiver. So if you've already got into business school without the GMAT, we do also accept a waiver from the business school in some cases. And I will give my contact details to you at the end of this, and you would tell us about that then. Your first degree needs to be in engineering, allied technology, or science, a science discipline. You need to be able to demonstrate a strong commitment to both UK engineering, business, and industry, and their respective engineering communities. And we'll get a little bit more into that later about how you can demonstrate that commitment. You need to have approximately 4 to 10 years of professional work experience after your degree. However, in some cases, we have also allowed people who've had 3 years to apply. But again, if you don't fit into the 4 to 10 year range, then we recommend you speaking to me, because you might be a special case, and there might be a strong chance that we still tell you to apply. So you just speak to me if you're outside of that range. As I mentioned at the start, you have to be either considering to apply for, already have applied for, or are already at one of our 19 eligible business schools. These are the 19 eligible business schools. These are on our website. I won't keep this slide on for too long, just for time's sake. But yeah, they're all fantastic schools, and they have been vetted by the ESBF and the Academy. And obviously the alumni coming out of these schools are of incredibly high success stories. So yeah, fantastic schools, and the list won't be changing for at least the next 3 years. So if there's a school that you're applying to that's not on this list, I'm afraid that for now, this is the list, and we won't be able to make any changes or additions to it just for now. And if we do, we will make it really clear and publicize that information on all of our websites. So yeah, this is the list for now. So in terms of what the benefits are of the SMF programme, obviously you get the £50,000 to be used towards your MBA. We don't stipulate how you utilise those funds. You can use them however suits you best. So it might be living costs, it might be accommodation, it might be tuition fees. So yeah, you get the £50,000 just before the start of your course to ensure that you have that funding in place to support you as you see fit. You also get access to the ESBF activities, which are a lot to do with university. So there's all sorts of things you can get involved with there. So there's university challenges with students, there's engagement opportunities, there's outreach with school age pupils, university students, as I said, and with kind of local businesses. There's lots of different ways that you can get involved. And yeah, basically it's all about people who have done engineering and are looking to support young people who are passionate about both engineering and business. You also have access to the SMF community, which has over 400 members now. So it's a fantastic, thriving community, and being made this award gives you kind of a ticket into that community. There's an annual dinner. And again, there's lots of different kind of reference groups and ways that you can get involved with that really thriving community. You'd also have access to the Royal Academy of Engineering's events and opportunities. So we have a calendar of events that goes throughout the year and kind of there'll be lots of different things you might be interested in. So from all different engineering sectors, we have events, and also we do quite a lot of entrepreneurial work within our enterprise hub, which is part of the Academy. So in summary, there's loads of different ways that you can get involved. And getting this award means you then have access to all of these kind of invitation-only opportunities, if you will. You also get the opportunity to join what the Academy calls our awardee excellence community. And that's just a community of literally all of our awardees from all of our different programs across enterprise, research, international. And we have an online portal, and we have annual events a conference where you can kind of get together with all of these different awardees and kind of share, innovate, collaborate. So yeah, lots of different ways of getting involved once you're part of the network. So in terms of when you apply for the scholarship, what is it that reviewers are looking for? So pretty obvious, we're looking for leadership skills and interpersonal skills. And I'll come into this in a moment. As I said, a strong commitment to the UK. It's good if you can already demonstrate leadership within a work setting. And again, I'll come on to this in a moment. We're not looking for you to be a ready-made leader who's already done every single leadership role possible, but we are very much looking for potential. So again, it's important that you're able to just display that. We're looking for someone who could make a contribution to the UK's economic prosperity. And again, I'll come on to more of what that means and what that might look like in your application. We're also looking for people who have an understanding of how the MBA will enhance their trajectory in their personal career path. So someone who's really thought about why the MBA and why now. We're looking for role models, obviously. So getting into the questions. So you have 3 written questions. It's slightly different from previous years. And each of these questions, you'll be able to demonstrate all of those bullet points I just spoke about. Within the application process, you answer these questions. You also upload your CV. There's a few other pieces of documentation that are required, but these are really the core part that the review panel will be looking at. So the reviewers are engineers and business leaders from both the SMF community and the Royal Academy of Engineering community. So we have multiple reviewers will come together to look at each of the applications. Your application would always be reviewed by more than one person. And yeah, basically those people will be looking for those bullet points that I just mentioned in your written answers. They'll also be looking at your CV. So it's important that, and I'll come on to that in a moment. But yeah, just to talk about these questions for now. So the first question is quite a broad one. So how do you meet the criteria for this award? So in this question, you want to be talking about kind of what is your engineering foundation, kind of telling us a bit of a story about your engineering background, where that's come from. We also want to hear about your passion for engineering, passion for business, passion for leadership. We want to kind of get a sense of your leadership potential. So this might be where you bring in some of your examples of where you've been a leader, either in work or in potentially examples outside of work, if you don't have a great deal of work examples. We want to get a sense of your future ambition. Like, where do you see yourself going? Not necessarily in 5 years, but just in the long term, short term and long term, I should say. We want to hear about your motivation. So what is it that actually drives you? What propels you? Why do you even want to be a leader? Because not everyone does, right? What are your values? So what are your personal values? And we'll hear about some of this from the 2 fantastic alumni later on. But it's really important, obviously, that you understand what your values are and see how these drive you. And we also want to get a sense of your UK commitment. So in this question, it's a good idea to talk about where you see yourself fitting into UK industry, because you don't actually have a lot of other opportunities to talk about that. So this is a good place and a good time to do that. So with the second question, you need to describe a time in your life when you failed and what you learned from that experience. So this is also 500 words. This question is really asking you to apply your engineering mindset. So being able to figure out what was the failure. So being able to identify the failure, being able to reflect on it, being able to say, okay, here's the solution, and then being able to understand how can I ensure that that is something that doesn't happen again. So looking at the kind of full life cycle of the problem or the failure, if you will. So we want to see your engineering mindset in this question. So again, you'll be kind of showing off yourself as an engineer. We want to see, as I said, we want to see your problem solving. Again, we want to see a sense of leadership, potentially your accountability. And basically you're having I think quite a deep understanding of yourself, and this is a great time for kind of some of that deep self-reflection. So yeah, the main guidance for this question is don't start talking about a problem that someone else's failure. We really want you to get personal with this question. So yeah, that covers that question. And I've just seen someone in the chat has said, on the slide I've written that question 3 is 500 words. It's actually 250. So apologies for that. You're absolutely right in the chat. So question 3 is, how will the SMF's support of your studies advance the aims of the SMF programme? And yes, so it's a 250 word question. It's a new question. So here's where you might want to talk about how you see yourself contributing to the UK's economic prosperity, because that is one of the aims of the SMF. Here's where you might talk about your drive to resolve engineering problems which are facing society. So that's something that the Academy and SMF care a lot about. And here's where you might talk about how you see yourself being an ambassador for the SBF. So you might want to take a screenshot of that slide. Those are just some bullet points. The recording will also be put onto our website, so you'll be able to find it there as well. But hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what it is that the reviewers are looking to see in each of those kind of long form written questions. In terms of your CV, we advise no more than 2 pages. And we do advise, obviously, to highlight your engineering, your kind of leadership as much as you can. And a big thing that we always like to say is try to avoid jargon as much as you can. Not everyone will be as technical as you in your particular area of engineering or business, whatever it is. So yeah, to keep it 2 pages, keep it clear, avoid jargon. So yes, and just a quick final slide from me before I hand over to the fantastic alumni colleagues. So in terms of preparing for your interview, every candidate who does get through that first stage, so the interview is the second stage, so not everyone will be invited to interview, but if you are invited to interview, you will be asked to prepare a presentation on the following topic on the slide. So how will your chosen MBA programme accelerate and enhance your career progression? So you are asked to answer that question through a 10-minute presentation. So we would suggest you start with your why. So be as specific as you possibly can. So why an MBA? Why now? Why engineering in the first place? Why leadership? We also, as I mentioned earlier, would like to kind of get a sense of both your short and your long-term plans. You might have 2 plans, and we kind of, if you do have 2 plans or 3, kind of want to see if you've mapped out what the stages would look like in order for you to get to that end result, that end goal. So yeah, have clarity, even if there's multiple plans, and make sure you map it out from A to B, short term and long term. Only spend really 1 or 2 minutes on why you've chosen a specific school or a specific course. We're not as interested in that at this stage. Some of the questions from the interviewers after your presentation can dig more into that, but I would recommend saving the time to go into your kind of your story, your background, your why, your motivation, and not using too much of the time up on talking about your chosen school. After the presentation that you deliver, be prepared to discuss everything that's on your CV, especially if there are figures or achievements that you've got on your CV. Be prepared that the panel will dig into those figures and achievements and really be kind of getting a sense of what do those figures mean, and tell us more about how was that your achievement? What was your role in that? Also, you can expect questions. In the interview, you'll have a panel of 4 interviewers. 2 of them will be Academy Fellows, so people who are senior engineers, and 2 of them will be from the SMF community, so either SMF trustees or SMF alumni. And they will be asking you both about your kind of passion for business and about your kind of engineering foundation. They might also be asking you kind of some questions around if you've been working in kind of business roles. They might kind of be talking about what was your commercial impact that you had on that. But they could also equally ask you technical questions. It's kind of whatever you talk about in your presentation, then be expected to be asked about what you've spoken about. And no one is looking to catch you out. They're just looking to get a sense of who you are and what your passion is, and basically why you are someone who would be a great candidate for an MBA from an engineering background. Another thing that we sometimes don't hear enough about is people's role models. As I said earlier, talking about motivation is great. And I think role models come into that as well. So it might be a specific person or a specific company, or just specific areas within industry or engineering that are really interesting to you, and why. So without further ado, I'll stop talking. Don't worry, I will get to your questions as we go through. But now I'm going to hand over to Shri. So Shri was awarded a couple of years ago. She's a fantastic SMF, and she's going to talk a bit about her motivations, about basically how she was awarded, I suppose, and what she's been up to since, and kind of the impact the MBA has been able to have on her. So Shri, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Hi, everyone. My name is Shri. So I did my MBA in 2023 at INSEAD, and I was there from January to December, and post which I joined McKinsey in their London office to work in the consulting division. My main motivation for applying to SMF was not only just the financial support that they give, but I think it's a fantastic organization with a diverse network. And I really wanted to benefit from learning from the other people within that network. And so that was my initial motivation to applying, and that has been extremely helpful, not only throughout my MBA journey, but as well as post the MBA. So some of the events that Lauren has mentioned that I attended after graduating has helped me connect with like-minded individuals, has helped me learn about some of the journeys that other people have taken, which might not necessarily include the traditional consulting pathway straight after the MBA. So from that perspective, I can't thank SMF enough. I think it's been a great organization. And to then talk about my experience within the MBA and how it's helped me later on. So I worked in operations consulting before I went to the MBA. And so I was really in the nitty-gritty of sort of engineering projects in the consumer sector. And what I wanted to get exposure to was more strategic problems, as well as exposure to sort of more the corporate finance elements. So that led me to apply for an MBA. And then eventually I landed in McKinsey, where I now try to work as a generalist consultant to try and gain exposure to all sorts of different problems and all sorts of different sectors. I really enjoyed my time so far. I think the biggest learning from me from the MBA was not only the subject matter, but also how to work in teams with diverse personalities, diverse nationalities, and really different ways of approaching problem solving. I think it's a wonderful time that you get after working for a couple of years, where you can sort of take a break from your normal routine and then immerse yourself as a student. I think it's probably one of the last times we get to do that in adulthood. So I'd say for all of you, enjoy that experience in your MBA and try and make the most of the classroom time, the time you have to really think and engage with subjects, um, like we would have done in school, but without the pressure of usual school exams, etc. Um, Lauren, is there anything else I should be covering?
No, that, oh, my audio video is just coming on. Sorry. No, that was fantastic. I have some questions for you though. So what would you say was the most unexpected thing when about your MBA journey? What was something that you were kind of surprised about during the time you were there that you weren't
Um,
expecting?
Yeah, I think I wasn't expecting how much I would enjoy being a student. I look back now and I thought, what a special year it is. And everyone tells you before you apply that, this will be the best year of your life. And I used to wonder why that is. And now I think having gone through the experience, I can tell that having that freedom of time to really explore what's going on in the world, which careers you want to be involved in, and having that opportunity to try. I've noticed that when you're a student and you reach out for coffee chats, people are a lot more hospitable and open to speaking to you as opposed to when you're working. So I'd say I had exposure to different fields that I didn't even consider. So one of the one of the one of the teams I was with was really interested in venture capital, for example. It's not an area I had considered before, and they organized a trip to different VCs in London. And that really opened my eyes to what the world of VCs are like, what impact they can have. And it's not something I ever thought I would go into, but it raised an interest in that field. So I'd say always be open to trying new experiences and keeping that open mind for learning when you're in the program.
It's a fantastic answer. Being open-minded is very, very, very important.
Mhm.
And another question I had, or reflection, I guess, was when you interviewed, I was sat note taking, and something the panel were really impressed by was the way you demonstrated your having been a role model. Would you mind talking to everyone on the call just a little bit more about kind of the things that you had done prior to your application and the kind of the things that you were saying in your interview?
Yep, absolutely. So if I remember correctly, I think I talked about one of the projects I had done in my previous company, where it involved coaching a team member on an Excel model that they were building, and this team member it was their first consulting project, and essentially they weren't fully aware on how to do the model, and so I had to teach them essentially how to break that problem down first before getting them to work on the Excel model and help them build those skills as well as the confidence to then be able to do that in future projects. So I think that's one of the things I did. I would also encourage everyone to think about how they can demonstrate how they've been a role model in various experiences. So if I remember correctly, I had chosen one work example and then one personal example. And for some people, that personal example can be a sports team that they coach or a music team that they're part of, like a band. And think about your style and like you mentioned, your personal values and what makes you unique. And that I think we're going through the MBA application. That's something that you reflect on a lot. And so bring that out in your SMF application as well, so that the panel gets to know who you really are. And you haven't asked me this, but I think I can share that the panel is really friendly. They're not trying to catch you out. So I would really use this opportunity to really um, demonstrate what is your unique skill set, what is your unique value set, and why you think you're the best candidate to be selected. So I'd encourage you to think of it like that rather than interrogation on who you are, why you want to apply, etc.
Thank you so much, Sri. Okay, I might have a few more questions for you at the end because you have obviously a fantastic amount of knowledge and experience in this. But we will pass over to Billy now. Thank you so much, Sri. And if people listening in have questions, then you can pop them in the chat, and we can go back to Sri at the end of the call. So over to Billy. Thank you so much for starting your video. I'm going to go off now. If you want to introduce yourself, and similar to Sri, talk a little bit about what you've been up to. Again, the impact that you had, that you found the MBA had on you, and yeah, what was your experience also of applying for SMF?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Shri. So yeah, I'm Billy. I also went to INSEAD like Shri a little bit later. I graduated last summer. So pretty fresh out the scheme, one of the newer SMFs. I think just kind of to mirror what Shri said, I've kind of been overwhelmed and I'm incredibly grateful to have to have been supported through my MBA by the SMF. It's an amazing organisation. I think one of the things that really struck me is I think it's the power of the relationships you get to build through it. It's an excuse to meet some really interesting people. And the caliber of the other SMFs, it's just something else. Everyone's doing something really interesting. You'll always have fascinating coffee if you get the chance to connect with the SMFs. I was out in Boston last year with work, and given there are a couple of business schools out there, I reached out to some of the SMFs who were studying, managed to just connect with them, go and catch up, get to know them a little bit better, and it's super enjoyable. They're all really inspiring people, and everyone's going off in quite different directions, but doing something that is exciting and inspiring in its own way. So it's a great organisation to be part of. I think my experience of the MBA. So I came from the industry before. I was in aerospace. I worked for Rolls-Royce for 8 years before. I did 4 years within operations, and then another 4 years as a program manager, but still with quite an operational focus in my work. And I think I'd got to the point where I felt I'd almost slowed down. I'd stopped learning. And the value I brought was for the problems I was solving and the rigor I could put into the work. But it wasn't obvious to me where the next step was. And I think a lot of engineers get to that point where you've almost hit the engineer's glass ceiling, where without some credible means of demonstrating your commercial acumen, some of the doors you might want to take, or some of the interesting opportunities you'd like to have a go at, you're not necessarily the obvious candidate for, especially in the kind of commercial and kind of customer facing space. And that's what I was really curious about. So I decided the MBA was the right thing for me. It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of hard work. I think there's no kind of sugarcoating it. You will work very hard. It will be very intense. Um, and yet the content itself isn't necessarily rocket science. I think we often say you're drinking from the fire hose for a year, especially if you take a year-long program rather than a two, like at INSEAD. There's just a lot to consume in a very short amount of time. But I think whilst the volumes are quite high, it was a fascinating experience. The richness of the learning that came from just giving yourself the ability to step out of work, to to I suppose attend lectures full time, read case studies, learn about how other businesses had issues, tackled them, how they applied um, reasonably standard business tools, but things that I hadn't experienced as an engineer and hadn't used to fix some of their challenges and to navigate turbulent times. It was really interesting. So it was a great experience. I think the thing I was really taken by as well, or one of the kind of the deeper learnings from that year, was just really understanding the power of the human connection. I think as an engineer, you often tend to believe that if I do the best job I can, if my product is best in class, if my service is my service is world class, then I'm going to win commercially. And I think the reality is that's simply not true. If you don't have the commercial nous, if you don't have the ability to market, if you don't have the ability to present and to sell yourself, then even the world's best products, they won't see the light of day. And so you've got to be able to bring all of the different skills and all of the different aspects required to make a business a success together. It's not just the technical, it's not just the product. So I think the MBA was a great complement to the engineering degree I had before. Um, in terms of the impact, I did a bit of a quite a stark career pivot. I left industry, and I've embarked on a new career move. So I've joined a venture and growth investing firm. It's still got an engineering twist, so we look at engineering and kind of industrial businesses. So I can draw on my past experience, but it's a very different functional move. And I think for me, it's been really rewarding because it's an opportunity to carry on the learning. And I don't think I'd have had the ability to have made that move, or certainly wouldn't have been a credible candidate for an investing role had I not had that badge that the MBA gave me to demonstrate that I was capable or competent technically within the worlds of finance. I had a basic understanding of accounting. They're all the kind of things that it just helps, I think, to have that seal of approval, that stamp that says I can do it. So for me, I think bringing the engineering mindset and bringing that technical way of looking at problems and thinking about things as systems, and then complementing that with an opportunity to build and to grow your softer skills, to work with people from all around the world, to learn from people from other industries and develop a bit of a business acumen, it is super powerful. So the MBA has been really, I think, a really positive experience so far, but the learning hasn't stopped.
Thank you so much, Billy. What would you say would be your number one tip for the presentation part of the interview? Because if I'm honest, having sat on genuinely hundreds of interviews now, that does seem to be the kind of the pivot where the panel make their mind up about you. So what would you say would be your top tip for that presentation?
Yeah, interesting. I probably had that was the tough bit. That was the really tough bit with the interview. And to be honest, it took a lot of practice. I think between delivering a great or writing a great presentation and then delivering a great presentation are two different things. And so the morning before my interview, I sat in my hotel room and I stood in the mirror and I just I went through my script and I went through my script and I went through my script. And I remember when I finished, I turned to yourself and said, was that good on timing? Because I was really worried about being cut off. And the first time I'd practiced, it had taken me 15 minutes and I had a 10-minute slot. And it was just through repeating it and knowing where I was going that I got more comfortable in delivering within the right time frame. And it's a shame if you pour your heart and soul into a great presentation and then you miss the punchline because you've run out of time. So I think practice is huge.
That's a great answer. Another thing that a big compliment the panel gave to you after you left the room was that Billy seems just incredibly passionate and authentic, and they really felt that coming through. Now that might be a bit easier for you in person, but how do you have any recommendations for how someone might go about putting authenticity and passion on paper? So in those written answers and kind of on their CV, how do you convey that in the written word when they can't see you yet?
Yeah, I think I was talking about this with someone who's applying for their SMF a while back and was asking for a bit of advice. I think it's important to talk about the things you are passionate about. It's so much easier to come across as engaging, excited, and genuinely passionate about something that you truly are. And so, if you've done something interesting or you've done something you're really proud of, bring that out because I think the panel want to hear. They want to get to know you as a person. They're not looking for someone who's trying to tick some boxes and say, "Oh, I think I need to tell them about X, Y, and Z," but it needs to be professional. If you're a structural engineer, but I don't know, you've run a pop-up food stall at the weekend because you're a really passionate foodie, then tell them about that because that's really cool. And that adds a bit of flavor. It adds a bit of a bit of something else, I think, to the presentation. Or if you're really passionate about things that you've worked on, then lean in on those things that really made you tick. I think everyone's had a tough day at work, but the tough days where you wake up the next day and think, I'm looking forward to going back in and tackling that problem. Try and think, what were those projects? What were those problems I was trying to solve? And then tell the panel about those because you are genuinely passionate about them. And I think it comes across more easily.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Billy. Shri, can I invite you back? You can. We have a few questions in the chat. Some of them I will be able to answer. Thank you so much, both of you. It's fantastic to have your insights. I do really think passion, authenticity, ambassadorship were some really key things that made both of you shine, having, as I said, sat through lots of interviews. So one of the questions for both of you in the chat is, were the plans that you detailed in your SMF application and spoke about in your interview the same as the ones that you ended up undertaking after you completed the MBA? So Shri, if I ask that question to you first.
In short, yes. I think I was very upfront and clear that I did want to go into strategy consulting in the immediate term. And the reason for that was I wanted to build up the problem-solving skill set and that commercial lens that Billy mentioned in his message around how to engage with C-level clients. And I thought strategy consulting is the best place to do that. What I outlined after that was essentially then moving into engineering industry and focusing on a corporate role. Let's see, that is in the future. For now, I'm enjoying my experience here. And I'm learning a lot. I've been focusing recently on an engineering company, so it's been great to tie that back.
Brilliant, thanks, Shri. And same question to you, Billy.
Yeah, I think my ambitions for the MBA were quite exploratory. So I didn't really know fixed and firm where I wanted to end up. I had some ideas of some things I was curious about and I was passionate about finding a little more about. And so I think for me that a plan's only ever as good, or it's only ever up to date the moment you put it on paper. 10 minutes later it's already out of date. And so I think it's great to have a direction, and maybe if you've got your North Star, awesome, you know where you're going. But if you've got a general direction and you can push yourself toward that direction, then I don't think you have to get too hung up on what the actual end goal is, because you can get so many, you can get so much excitement out of, entrepreneurship. You could get that through investing. You could do that within a corporate. If the thing you're passionate about is building and building businesses, then you could do that in so many different environments. I kind of realized that it's very easy to get hung up on the destination and forget actually the destination is only a destination because there's some things I'm really excited about doing. And I want those to be part of my solution, not to be the end goal, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. They're fantastic answers from both of you. So thank you so much. And really good question. Thank you to have asked that. Some more kind of admin questions. One is if you studied economics and maths but have worked on engineering projects, are you eligible? If your degree is not clearly an engineering degree, it might fall into the, as I mentioned earlier, the allied technology or sciences category. Just email me what the name of the degree was or your CV, and I can get back to you directly. In terms of another question was, what GMAT score are you looking for in order to be selected? So as mentioned before, we say 650, but we would also accept slightly lower. That's just an approximate score. Aim for 650. The GRE, as I said, is the test that a lot of business schools are using now. And there's a website that calculates the equivalent to score to the old GMAT. But again, if you're not sure about your score and whether you should apply with it, email me and I'll probably just encourage you to apply anyway, because you'll be able to show off in other areas. The other question was the two-part question from Jordan. So yes, you do need to demonstrate a GMAT score at the time of application. And if you don't have, as I said, if you've already applied to a business school, but they didn't require you to take the GMAT or the GRE, they probably would have given you a waiver. You just put that into your application. And then the second part of Jordan's question was, does having a place at a business school secured work in your favour when applying? And the answer is no. We have just awarded just recently 2 candidates who did not have a place at business school. We would call that an offer in principle. So we would still give you the offer, but then we would just wait until you had then got the confirmed place at business school before we then gave you the full offer and your contract and everything. And to that point, if you are someone who is yet to apply for business school, but wants to apply for SMF now or throughout at some point in 2026, then we highly recommend getting in touch because we'll be able to connect you with someone lovely like Shri or Billy who might be able to give you some one-on-one guidance, maybe a quick Teams call, a phone call, maybe just some back and forth emails. If you've got any questions about the process of actually applying for the MBA, and that's if you're applying for SMF before you've fully submitted your MBA application. So we very much want you to know that we are here to help. We don't gatekeep information. We just want you to see you succeeding if this is the thing that you're really passionate about. Were there any other questions from Pritam? There was one more question. Would you say it's better to have secured a place at one of the eligible business schools before applying? Oh, so I've just kind of answered that. Some people do apply for other business schools. That's fine. But we sadly, as I said, we won't be able to look at those applications or take any. We won't be looking at the list at least for the rest of this year of those 19 eligible business schools. So do ensure that one of the schools you've applied to is on that list or intend to apply to is on that list. If you've worked for more than 10 years, yes, you're definitely eligible. We just say 4 to 10 as a range, but if you've worked for more than 10 years, yes, you can definitely still apply. Good question, anonymous. From Richard, there is a new GMAT since around 2023. There's an equivalent table, old v new, as the score based on so the score is based on the old. So the score is based on the older version of the GMAT. And again, if you've got any questions about your GMAT score, just email me directly and I'll try and get back to you as promptly as I can. But it really is just an approximate, so not something to worry about too much. Isn't a career in entrepreneurship not taken as favorably as going into consulting? No, there's no better career path. You might go into consultancy, you might go back into industry, you might have a startup idea that you might discover your business partner on your MBA. There's no one size fits all approach. Each pathway is equal. There's no favorable route. It's whatever you're passionate about and how you put across, as Shri and Billy have said, how you convey that passion in your application. And yes, a GMAT waiver would be accepted in replacement of a GMAT. You just talk to me in advance and I would double check that. Those are all of the questions. Sorry, I'm such a fast talker. Did anyone have any? We have 1 more minute. If not, just would like to say again, thank you so much to Shri. Thank you so much to Billy. If people want to reach out to you on LinkedIn, would that be brilliant? And don't just do a silent ad. Obviously say I was on the SMF webinar and I saw you speaking and I'd like to ask you a question. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. But yes, so thank you so much to both of you for giving some insights on the call. And thank you everyone for giving up some time to listen. And hopefully that's been insightful for you. And I'll now say goodbye. Thank you so much.